Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar. Today, we will be looking at how to achieve best-in-class reconciliation, and we'll be looking at the Dun Bradstreet story. This webinar is brought to you by sharedserviceslink and sponsored by BlackLine. My name is Sarah Fury, and I am your host for today. I am the head of research at sharedserviceslink, and I am delighted to be joined by Gretchen Sikora, who is the senior finance leader at Dun Bradstreet. You, of course, have a very important role to play in today's webinar, and that is to make sure that you get the most out of this hour. Please do take the time to submit your questions that you have to us using the chat functionality on the right-hand side of the screen. If you submit questions to us in the box demonstrated below, we will be able to answer your questions in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. And again, the sooner you ask your questions, the more likely we'll be able to answer it at the end of the session. So let's just touch on the agenda for today. I'll be opening up, discussing the context and why we're all here today. Then Gretchen will be sharing some insight on the challenges of a financial close. She'll then be sharing her insight on how to achieve best-in-class reconciliation, and we'll be sharing her insight from Dun Bradstreet. Again, we'll have about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end of the session. So just touching on a little bit of context, in different organizations, the reconciliation process can be very different. For those who are still reliant on manual reconciliation, tools such as Excel, information, and stacks of binders, it not only limits your visibility in the end of your spend, but it actually impacts your workforce as well. There's a good chance that your team is working overtime to close and possibly taking binders home at the weekend. So if any of this sounds familiar, I think you will learn a lot from this presentation today. Today we'll be looking at how Dun Bradstreet made those pain points a thing of the past and really implemented some life-changing technology. So now I would like to hand over to you, Gretchen.
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome everyone. As we can all relate to our financial close process, we have many challenges and we strive to be effective and efficient during the month end so that we can deliver high-quality financials in a timely fashion. Within a shared service center or a center of excellence, you are dealing with volume, processes, and quick turnaround times. How many times have you gone home and asked yourself, is there anything you can do differently? Does your close process look like this one? This is common close process for most of us, and we're very probably familiar with this. Data is pulled into our ERP system from many sources. Then we overlay with adjustments and accruals. Then we pass them from preparer to approver, manually, paper. Then we send to senior management for review. Then we store these documents probably both electronically and in physical binders. Senior management and audit wants to ensure controls are complete for the close and that we are probably tracking all this stuff in Excel spreadsheets. Then, after you think you're done, you have more journal entries that you do during the close. So this process begins to wind through the routine again. Internal and external auditors want to review and validate your controls, and it creates this tangled process that occurs outside your ERP system, again, typically in spreadsheets. Sarah, I'm going to turn it to you to take the poll.
Great, thank you very much, Gretchen. So we would like to learn a little bit more about who is with us on the webinar today. So the poll question we have for you today is, how would you describe your current reconciliation process? Would you say that it's still very manual, that you mainly operate off spreadsheets, you have lots of information in binders? Would you say it's somewhat automated, that you do use some reconciliation technology to an extent? In the end, you're still very reliant on spreadsheets. Or would you say that you are very automated, that you are mostly automated through a reconciliation tool, possibly a cloud-based one that gives global visibility? Good to see lots of you participating in this. We have just over half of you voting so far, and I'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. That's 65% of you voting, and the results will be coming up on your screen now. And interesting to see here that only, well, 13% of you, fortunately, are highly automated, but the majority of you are either only somewhat automated or still very manual. Gretchen, what's your take on this?
Well, for Dun Bradstreet, we were a very manual process before we started looking at an automated tool. And again, I think when we look at the common challenges in our processes, we have manual processes around a lot of our reconciliations, which causes some inefficiencies. What we found out, we weren't standard in the way reconciliations were being prepared across entities. Obviously, we're 100% paper-based. The amount of paper that we printed out and then we reprinted because there was something wrong with the reconciliation, you know, we had a lot of papers on our desk in binders. You know, the lack of training and knowledge, you know, when everything's in Excel, in binders, it's hard to do the training and knowledge transfer among your team members. You know, there's always increasing demands for support. Over the years, you know, each year the auditors want more support or more evidence of support. So, you know, you can only put so much in Excel and back up in binders. You know, risk and, you know, status of risk and transparency, you know, you do have it in Excel so you can see it, but you have to go out to files or shared folders and try to find everything, and that becomes very inefficient. And I think we've all faced these challenges when we look at our close process. I think all of us can relate that we all have these common challenges with our reconciliation process. As a shared service center, we have a quest for continuous success. For Dun Bradstreet, you know, process excellence is important to us. You know, we need to be best in the process. We need to be the subject matter experts, and we should drive standardization and globalization. Service excellence. For Dun Bradstreet, you know, we are a service-based organization. You know, our customers expect excellent service. You know, we always hear what's not going well, and we hear few things that go great. So we strive and to provide quality service. Continuous improvement. We need to be the leaders in the continuous improvement. The organization is looking to us to keep improving our processes. How many of you have been asked to do more with less? And new technology. As a center of excellence, you need to be the early adopters of technology. In order to meet the above three quests, you have to utilize technology to optimize your process excellence, your service excellence, and to keep continuing improving. Questions we ask ourselves: how can I do all this and still be best at what we do? Our vision at Dun & Bradstreet is to leverage the same system, process, and procedures to enhance our controls across the markets. We want to be able to close the books in the same manner no matter where you're located, whether it's in the center of excellence or virtually in the local markets. At the center of excellence within transactional accounting, we break down our processes into 4 key functions: recording, reconciling, reviewing, and reporting. When we enter a market to embark the transition into the center of excellence, we concentrate on these areas with the end goal of globalization and standardization. In the early stages of our journey, each of these functions were in silo buckets, operating independent of one another. There were 4 different ways of creating, documenting, and retrieving data, which involved a lot of manual intervention to complete each task, create dashboards, and ensure all the tasks and reconciliations were being completed. As we look back, we achieved our goal as we now have everyone at least executing key functions in the same manner using a standard platform. Our organization is challenged every day to support the business who's concentrating on global growth. But with our previous systems and processes, at any one time, we never knew the true status of our key financial process, as they were all in shared drives in Excel stored. The question we ask is, why BlackLine? To address our needs for better control and more faster, accurate month-end close, we wanted to ensure our Center of Excellence model we could close the books no matter where we were within the organization. The financial close would be standard and done in a timely manner. When we embarked on our journey moving the international markets into our COE strategy, we quickly recognized that our current existing networks and data storage process hampered us from becoming and creating the best-in-class reconciliation process. We recognized early on that we needed to find a partner who would help us centralize, track, monitor these key functions. Our organization reviewed numerous solutions designed to automate reconciliations and provide team members with instant access to real-time data anywhere in the world. In our review, we found that each vendor provided the same type of solutions, but BlackLine was one that stood out in terms of sales support, ease of use to both the preparer and approver standpoint. To help make our decision, we engaged our team members to help grade each vendor solution on key functionalities and also ran a return on investment analysis comparing BlackLine to other products and solutions in the same space. The team rated BlackLine the highest in ease, format, and end results. To me, BlackLine was everything in one bag. What was the results of adopting BlackLine? But first, let's review how the early years looked for us at Dun Bradstreet. I'm sure all you can relate to some of these items on this list. For Dun Bradstreet, we didn't know if all reconciliations were completed, documented, reviewed properly at any given time without having manual resources manually pulling the data together for us. If we look at some of these items on the list, we had inconsistent reconciliation methodology and storage for over our 70 reporting entities. Every time we went into the market, we would find different ways of how they were prepared, stored, and retrieved. And even the methodology of preparing a reconciliation was different from market to market. Format and completeness of reconciliation varied. Again, depending on what market you were in, your views of those reconciliation and the story they told you could be very different from market to market. Timing of reconciliations were inconsistent by market and not consistently within policy. Because we didn't have the transparency, we weren't always 100% sure if they were always getting done according to our policy and if they were timely completed after the close or during the close. No transparency between the market controller and controller. Yes, we had quarterly reviews with the market controllers, but again, it was verbal, it was spreadsheets. Potential reconciliation balances did not tie back to the reported balance. I can bet you everybody can be shaking their head right now that they have come across a reconciliation in their time that did not tie back to the trial balance. And again, no backup for the preparers and approvers. When we review or prepare reconciliations, the sources that the preparer used were stored on their shared drive, in their local drives. And again, the reviewer might not have had access to that documentation at their fingertips. We had no systematic way to assess the risk and opportunity for each market as a total company. Again, we could go market by market, controller by controller, and gather the list, but this was a timely, very timely involved process. Aged items on reconciliation not addressed in a timely manner. Yes, we've identified rec items, but did we manage them timely and make sure that they were corrected in a timely fashion? Managerial reporting and metrics was created manually. I don't know how many times I was asked, can you give us a list of all your recs and who prepares them and who reviews them? And I'll be like, okay, let me go back to my Excel file. Oh, let me update it because, you know, we added a new account. So again, it was a manual process to put that data together when we were asked for reporting and metrics. And most of us will relate to this. It was 100% manual process with our SOX and external auditors. You know, SOX and audit would come visit, they would come with a team of 7, they would go in a conference room, they would ask for all your binders, and let's not forget that the auditors never put anything back in sequence, so that when you wanted to go look for something, it wasn't where you thought it was. And SOX teams would love to take your binders, but you wouldn't let them leave because you had to make them make a copy, so then either you were in the copy room making copies, or they were making copies of the binders. How many of you can relate to this picture? This is how I felt trying to organize 70 entities reconciliations and ensuring that we had everything prepared, reviewed in a logical way that we could easily retrieve for audit, SOX, or general management questions. And let's not forget how many times we took these binders home to review, as we spent all day working in the office getting the reconciliations organized, sequenced in a binder. I can honestly, personally remember going to my son's baseball tournaments with binders and bags, so I could sit there and review reconciliations, or sit there and review reconciliations because I couldn't get them done in the office. Or leaving the office with book bags. You remember the ones that we get from conferences? I used to keep those so I could bring my binders home at night. And then once you got to when I got to the baseball tournament, or when I got home, I realized that I needed documentation that was back at the office. So all those bags went back in the car to then cart them back into the office the next day. For Dun Bradstreet, those are bad memories for us. Let's see what has changed in the way that we work each day. Life with BlackLine. Today, we now have standard templates for each reconciliation. Local markets and the Center of Excellence don't have the flexibility of creating their own format. A prepaid template is a prepaid template for everyone in the Dun & Bradstreet organization. Due dates are now established systematic, and our preparers and reviewers get alerts. So now we can ensure that our reconciliations are done per policy, and to challenge our team members, we actually have due dates in BlackLine that's earlier than our policy dates, so that we ensure that we're in compliance every month. We now have a global repository for all reconciliation by market. Everything's housed in one central system, able to be accessed by anyone who has required access. We have robust reporting tools now which allow us to have insight on every reconciliation in every market at any time. So now when we can go in and run a report to see what comments reviewers had put on reconciliations. Before, remember, I had these binders and I had to go through binder to binder and see if anybody wrote notes on the reconciliations. Now, it's a click of a button, I run a report, status with comments, and I can see it by entity, by region, or by a company as a whole. 100% account reconciliation with an option for auto-certification. How many times have you stayed awake at night wondering, did all those reconciliations get done? And then you go back and you ask your team, did everybody do your recs? Did everybody do your recs? That's how I felt. I kept repeating myself. So now I can go into BlackLine, go to my dashboard, and I can easily tell if I am behind schedule, ahead of schedule, and if I am 100% in compliance with our policy. And our most favorite is pre-populated with Oracle GL balances. We now have balances being pulled into BlackLine, so the preparer has no option to change it and has the balance that they need to reconcile to. Global system which allows access when needed. So now our external auditors have access to this system, our SOX team, the local controllers and corporate controllers, as well as preparers and approvers have access to this system 24/7. Automation of balance sheet reviews and required adjustments with the local controllers. Now we can become more value added and sit down every month with the local controllers and we review the balance sheet. Before we used to do this, but with somebody compiling an Excel spreadsheet of by account any risk or opportunity or topics to address. Today, this process is 100% automated as we can run reports out of BlackLine into Excel, and we use those as evidence of review with our local controllers. The global database now allows for us for reporting to be automatically measured and distributed. So today, when I'm asked, who's doing a reconciliation in Belgium, right? I go to the system, I pull up Belgium, I export a grid, and I send it off. I don't have to recheck it. I don't have to worry about I'm missing something. It's all there. So I can take any request for metrics and distribute them very quickly. BlackLine has allowed us to join each of these key functions in one-stop shopping. We have eliminated non-value-added work. Remember, prior to BlackLine, our staff spent countless of hours manually tracking and monitoring the close process. Today, we have the resources to focus truly on critical work such as analysis and discrepancies. Instead of prepping a reconciliation, pulling balances over, copying rec items over, those days are over. If you ask my team now, they would tell you stories of how it has saved them time and eliminated non-value-added work, and especially with the auditors. They are always asking, are we going to use BlackLine for that? Because BlackLine has brought us so much automation and improvement in our controls to the process. I can honestly tell you that BlackLine has become the central and most important tool we use in accounting. We have been able to quickly centralize key functions. With BlackLine, our team has been able to support the centralization and globalization of key functions. Staff and auditors can now access this information, perform tasks from anywhere in the world at any time. We can actually pivot resources based on if somebody's on vacation, if somebody's on maternity leave, if somebody leaves the company, we can easily pivot resources to those reconciliation with little ease. With BlackLine, we've met our key objectives from rapidly developing our CEO strategy. We're actually the leaders in implementing in front of our colleagues in AP and AR. BlackLine has enabled us to very quickly standardize and improve the control environment, eliminate redundancies, and eliminate best practice across the entire organization. With BlackLine, we were able, with reducing the elimination, for example, we found out that we might have been doing something in the COE, and the local markets were also doing something in the COE, in the local markets in Excel. Moving those transactions and the workflow into BlackLine, we easily identified those redundancies, and then we made a decision on who was those owners. Was it the center of excellence or was it the market? So that we were not both doing it and allowing resources back into the business to support the business. We've seen increase in transparency, visibility, and accuracy during the close. Previously, our organization lacked visibility in the key financial processes, making it difficult for us to find and correct discrepancies early in the close. With BlackLine, we now have a tool that provides transparency and insight 24/7, globally, from a preparer standpoint up to the corporate controller. So I can honestly say I can sleep at night. In the past, I used to worry if I missed a reconciliation or if I missed documentation. I would stay awake at night thinking about that. In today's age, being modern is truly a buzzword, and I feel that BlackLine has made our organization more modern. We are now using technology to do the reconciliations. Would you ever think back in the day during your accounting classes and then fast forward to today that you would be able to utilize technology to do reconciliation? BlackLine is our global solution for preparing, approving, storing documentation in a cloud-based application. A lot of you might be wondering, what was our return on investment? What savings did we see as an organization? Reconciliation of accounts. Gathering data from the GL, subledger, and reporting system automatically as often as needed. We actually import our balances every hour into BlackLine. So throughout the close, we can monitor our key reconciliations. Before, that would be somebody manually going into Excel, pulling up the file, putting in the new data, populating the data. With BlackLine, this is automatic for the preparer. Users are prepared with the initial reconciliation. So now we can carry over rec items from month to month, and they're pre-populated, so the users now can only have to update with the current activity. Open reconciliation items can be carried forward from previous period, and the user does not need to re-enter them. The system allows you to put end dates. So if you know if something's going to end, will clear the next month, you can put that end date, and then when you roll that reconciliation, that rec item will automatically come off your reconciliation. This has saved us a lot of time. All supporting documentation is stored with the reconciliation now. So now we have purposes, we have procedures, we have the supporting documentation that the preparer used to support the reconciliation. We're allowed to attach invoices, spreadsheets, calculations, so that documentation is now stored within the reconciliation. History of reconciliations are centralized and easy accessible. Remember doing fluxes? You would have to go to your Q3 binder, and then you went to your Q2 binder, tried to figure out what the rec was, and then come up with your flux analysis. Now today is that we can easily, by one click in the reconciliation, pull up any previous period and see the different items. So it makes us prepare our fluxes much quicker. Auto-certification features, which restrict rules that allow some accounts meeting certain criteria to auto-certify, prepared, reviewed without human intervention. A lot of times our preparers would spend a lot of time just rolling an account balance that didn't change or had no activity for the month. In BlackLine, we can set rules up. You know, if it's supposed to be a zero balance account and it's zero at the end of the month, it can certify. So there's a lot of different rules that you can apply to help auto-certify without having your preparer and approver touch. And I think for us, we're probably at 45% auto-certification of our reconciliations. We save approximately 10 to 15 minutes per reconciliation per preparer. I would say, you know, if you have a lot of reconciliations, we're doing about 5,000 reconciliations a month. You know, if you do the math, you know, you are saving a lot of time per preparer as well as the reviewer who had to go in and touch each one of those. Reconciliation templates allow for standardization. So today, because of that, every rec looks the same. So if a reviewer goes in to a Europe entity or a Latin America entity or a US entity, the reconciliations look the same. The the preparation of it, the look, the content is all the same. So it makes it very easy for our auditors and our SOX teams to understand each reconciliation because it's the same no matter what entity you go into. We are allowed to assign risk levels to each reconciliation. So before we kind of did this with our SOX team, we had like
they now logged into a central system to review all accounts. So they're no longer going to the multiple binders to review. Eliminated manually tracking down missing reconciliations. So you remember when you're going through the binder or if you're looking for a reconciliation, you can't find it. This central repository has eliminated that because everything is in the system, and when you have new activity for the month, BlackLine automatically will pick up that balance and a reconciliation is out there to be prepared. Standardization format. As a reviewer, you can easily go from market to market or entity to entity and be familiar with the format of the reconciliation. Approval or rejection is with one click. So now I can go in the system and I can either accept or I can reject. And if I reject, I can also put comments. Before, if you rejected something, you probably got up at your desk, you went back to somebody, gave them a piece of paper or wrote notes on a spreadsheet. Now you can capture all that feedback within the system, so you have a point of reference if you have follow-up. Evidence checklists that associated with the certification. So I know one of the key things over the year is our auditors are asking us more about how is our evidence of review being conducted. So now in BlackLine, there's a little certification. As a reviewer or an approver, you have a checklist of things that you should be checking so that we can now provide our auditors with how we're reviewing and what things we're looking for as we review a reconciliation. And one thing that actually has helped us is leaders to manage the performance of their team members by setting time deliverables when reconciliations are due. So then you can see where your resources are being utilized. If one person is not getting their reconciliations done timely compared to their peers, now you have a tool that you can see and work with your team. If one team member has too many recs, you can set up teams within BlackLine so then your whole team can work together to get their reconciliations done at one time. Whereas when you're in Excel, you're not sure who's working on it. And flexible reporting capabilities. Again, as a approver, it allows us to pull different reports so that we can get transparency in account, whether it's an aged item, a required adjustment report, or who is preparing and certifying a rec. It's easy now to pull those metrics together. Time savings from an audit and SOX perspective. I must say this was probably the biggest area where we've saved time with our resources. Saving time spent providing copies of reconciliations and supporting documentation. How many times, and I'm thinking all of you are sitting there in their heads, how many times have we given multiple copies to the auditor of the same thing? So those days are totally eliminated for us because the documentation's in BlackLine. The auditors can't delete it. They can't miss it because it's there for them. We provide view-only access to all reconciliations, supporting documentation, process, and procedures. So I remember spending countless hours with auditors explaining the purpose of a rec, what's the procedure. And then, when your audit staff turns, then you go through that same process over. Now today, we have BlackLine where we have our procedures and processes documented so the auditors can look at that when they go in and look at a reconciliation. And if they come to me and ask me, what is this rec? What's the purpose of this rec? My answer back to them is did you go to BlackLine? Go to BlackLine first, and if you still have questions, come back to me. And 9 out of 10 times, they don't come back to me because the information is self-service for them now. Auditor's evaluation and notes feature. There is areas in BlackLine where the auditors can leave notes and evaluation if you want to seek their feedback. Eliminate travel costs. So, you know, they used to come like a herd of cows into a conference room. There used to be, you know, 5 of them, you know, and they were charging that travel back to us. So now they can sit anywhere and access our reconciliation. And enhance our controls by providing auto feed from Oracle data and locking balances from being edited, which is a big control enhancement for us because, you know, a lot of the auditors and stocks would ask us, you know, how do people pull the balances to tie to the reconciliation? This has been eliminated because we are now pulling from our ERP system directly into BlackLine. And we also incorporated all our stocks controls with the task product within BlackLine, which includes our documentation of our review of the control and evidence. And we actually put our sampling of audit requests stored in BlackLine. So each month, even though you have to prepare the control on a monthly basis, when your stocks and audit team come in, they're not testing every month. They will make a selection. So today, they can go in there and look at any month, pull what their control is, and our documentation for each month is in there, which makes it, again, self-service. Some of you might be wondering, what was our implementation process and was it hard? Our implementation process was very simple and easy. BlackLine will lead you through each step. The implementation started out with a kickoff with the implementation team from BlackLine. They laid out the process and, of course, signed homework. The most important thing is determine who is in scope. What was your guiding principles? Our guiding principle was if it was an entity in our ERP system, then it was required to be in BlackLine. Develop your organizational structure. Again, we mirrored our ERP system setup, logic, and terminology the same. So if you, no matter what system you were in, whether it was our Oracle system or BlackLine, an entity number would be the same. Compile the templates for each setup of the process. BlackLine created templates for each step of the process, and your homework assignment was assigned based on those templates. So you would complete those templates, review it with your BlackLine consultant, make any necessary changes, and they were quickly loaded into BlackLine. Training was key to this success. We had live sessions and we had hand-on sessions with our BlackLine team to ensure adoption and understanding by our team members. When we had the hands-on sessions, we actually had our preparers come in with reconciliations that they wanted to do from Excel to BlackLine, and our BlackLine team was there to assist, provide guidance, and explanation and how to use the system. So the team rolled up their hands and had the opportunity to ask questions among their peers as well as the BlackLine team. Do it in a big bang. You can do it easily. We did it in 6 to 8 weeks. What were our lessons learned? Our lessons learned was do not wait. I thought I was being efficient and effective in my current environment. I thought using binders, using shared drives, using Excel-based reconciliation was fine. That's what I was taught. That's what I've worked with year after year. I wish I'd engaged BlackLine sooner. I think I would have less gray hair. Keep it simple. We all try to overcomplicate processes. Logically develop the organizational structure to align with how your ERP system was set up. We did not try to mirror our tax structure or our consolidation structure. It was a simple list of entities and a single parent, and then from there we created new parents based on region. For example, North America, Europe, Latin America, Asia. We kept it simple. One thing I would have done differently was I think I would have engaged technology sooner. Even though it wasn't hard to create the extracts from our ERP system to BlackLine, it was getting it scheduled with the technology team among their other priorities and schedule. Put your mind to it. You can easily do it with 6 to 8 weeks. We had 2 resources on our side, myself and another team member. In fact, we were able to roll out Asia entities by ourselves without reliance on BlackLine teams. And finally, and most important, engage your team members. We brought the team members in from the beginning, in time of selection of vendor, to the rollout, to the homework assignments, and to the actual day-to-day use of the system. So by time we were live, the team had a good feel for the system. You will have those early adopters. Shine the light on those, and those others will follow. For the team, they all knew if they put the time, effort up front, they would see the benefit at the end. And that has truly been what we've seen at Dun Bradstreet. There are some other BlackLine enhancements or products that we are using that we have seen significant savings and automation. We now use task management, which we currently rolled out to all our COE entities. We house all our entity controls and supporting documentation and our monthly checklist. We're using transactional matching now, which we use for our bank reconciliations. Before it was a very manual process to do bank reconciliation, download your bank statements, download your ledger, and try to match. We have saved 2 to 3 hours manually on each bank reconciliation using the matching module. And variance. A variance will allow you to set rules on your balance sheet accounts and explain variances within BlackLine. You can document and workflow those variances for approval and automatically pull your fluxes through a report. Our POA is to eliminate our monthly balance sheet flux submission provided to the consolidation team and have everyone use the BlackLine system to look at our variances. I thank you, and I will turn it over to you, Sarah.
Great. Thank you very much, Gretchen. Thank you for a really insightful presentation and some great data there and a really great story. Again, I'd just like to remind all our listeners, if you haven't yet submitted a question, please do so. I believe lots of the ones that have been submitted, Gretchen's actually touched on a lot of them towards the end of the presentation there. So any further ones, please submit them to us, and we will put them to Gretchen now. Gretchen, you did just touch on this in your last slide there, but maybe you could just expand on it a little bit more. You said that BlackLine has allowed you to monitor your close more efficiently. Did you implement the Task Manager module at the same time as the reconciliation module?
No, we didn't. We actually started out with the reconciliations because we wanted to focus truly on the reconciliation process to make sure that we, as an organization, everybody knew how to do the reconciliation, what the expectation of the reconciliations are, and we worked on the standardization of that process. Shortly after that, after everybody was comfortable with reconciliations, we then turned to the task module where we put all our SOX controls in, and then and our monthly checklist. So now we were not using binders to keep all our SOX evidence. Now that's all been migrated over to the task, which actually a benefit is our SOX team, you know, they come in like in phases, like they'll come in June and they'll test like, you know, January, February, March, April. Now they're actually able to do some of their work ahead of time because the information is readily available to them. So before they kind of waited and then gave us a request list. Now that request list is always in BlackLine and it's updated on a monthly basis. And then the closed checklist, again, we were in Excel, and you know now we have it in BlackLine by entity, which allows us for transparency, especially if somebody's out, somebody's sick, somebody has an emergency. You know, we know what needs to be done during the close.
That's great. That's really helpful. Thank you, Gretchen. And again, you did touch on this in the last few slides, but quite a few people were asking, how long does this take? And you said, 6 weeks, and it can be done in 6 to 8 weeks. But could you just elaborate? Is this the whole process from beginning to fully automated? Just to give a sense, was there anything outside this 6 to 8 week time schedule, or was that really everything?
Honestly, the 6 to 8 weeks was our time frame, and that wasn't us 100% on the project, because myself and the other person who was actually our BlackLine admin had day jobs. We had our full-time day job. But we've organized. We sat down and we organized ourselves, saying what we wanted to do. We knew the sources that we were going to pull our data, and we utilized some of the team members to help populate some of the templates. So because they were closer, to those the reconciliations and the balances, so we used team members to help tie out the balances. One thing that we did do is we did do it in 2 phases. So we did the U.S., all of Europe, and all of Latin America in our first 6 to 8 weeks. Then, based on that experience, we were then able to go out to our Asia market, and then myself and the other person were able to quickly load those balances up in BlackLine, do our own training to get them up to speed. So we did break it down, but I would say 90% of the organization was done in 6 to 8 weeks.
That's great. Thanks for elaborating on that. Another question from a listener. This sounds like this listener is familiar with BlackLine's technology. So if it's too specific, just let me know. You can get back to them individually, perhaps. The kind of question / statement is that BlackLine provides, one consolidated balance for subledger and GL balance category. How does your team work on preparing the composition of that consolidated SL GL balance? Does that resonate with you?
There are some options in BlackLine. For example, you can group accounts. So there are some accounts that we will group across our organization, like intercompany. So we can pull all our intercompany accounts into one reconciliation so that we can make sure everything eliminates. So that's one way where if you are looking at a certain account across everybody, you could group them together. There's also reports. Every report you can run at an entity level, a region level, or a company level. So, so you can run it based on what you want to look at. So if, for example, as a leader, I might want to see what are all the aged items in the organization. I would run that report at the company level, and it would list every entity and every rec item that's been aged. So there's different ways to get to the data depending on what you're looking at. But BlackLine does allow you to look at it at entity level or at the highest level.
That's great. Thanks for the detail on that. Lots of questions from listeners. Another one here for you is, who defines the controls to be performed on each account? Are there standard controls, or can they be customized to each company?
So our control, so 2 things we did. Our SOX control are company-wide, and our SOX team works with each market to define those controls. For us, because we're a shared services, we have certain, we call center of excellence controls that are consistent across all the markets. So reconciliation falls under the COE control, so all our reconciliations look the same. And another control that we've put in place at the COE level is when we implemented, we did sit down and come up with standard controls, meaning what we expect in a reconciliation. So, if when you have a rec item, you can list it as a timing, a required adjustment, or a list item. So we customize that, or we define those so that the team could understand when they were putting the recs together what item class to classify them as. We've also documented what documentation is required within a reconciliation. So, so the team knows that you always have to attach the transactional detail that make up the reconciliation, just in case the approver wants to look at the detailed transactions, they have that. You know, bank statement. So we did have a checklist of what the required items were in a reconciliation, but the controls itself, we pointed to our SOX control.
That's great. Thank you so much. Another listener is asking, what type of ongoing support do you still receive from BlackLine? I would say there's two things. I probably am in contact with my implementation consultant every month, whether it's just a check-in or, hey, can I run this idea by you? We want to try to do this. Can I do this? So they do provide that advice to you. They have an online community where if you have trouble or you have an idea or you want to see how somebody else is dealing with an issue, their online community is fabulous. You know, there's a lot of dialogue in there. BlackLine employees are very engaged in that community and will respond back if you have a question. And then there is the BlackLine support team where you can actually log in an issue, whether, you know, you're getting an error message, your one country wants to see something in a foreign language, we can't certify something, any technical issue that you have with the system, you can log in a support case. And I personally have been 100% satisfied with their response time, their follow-up time, whether it's phone call, emails, they honestly follow up and make sure that your issue has been resolved. That's great, and that's really good insight. I'm afraid we are coming up to the hour. There are a few questions we haven't yet been able to address, but there are a lot of good ones in there that I think either BlackLine might be well placed to get back to you. So we will submit them to BlackLine, and you should get a response from them. So again, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation in today's webinar. Thank you to BlackLine for their support. A huge thank you to Gretchen for a really great presentation, some really strong content, and for sharing a great story. And again, thank you to all the listeners on the webinar today and for your great questions. Just to wrap up, we do have lots of webinars nearly every week for the next few months for either reconciliations, procure-to-pay colleagues, or shared services. It's really a topic for everyone. And we have lots of events coming up soon, particularly on global process ownership and P2P leaders. So thank you very much again for your time today, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you, and bye.